Welcome to Small Biz Life, episode 23.
Woohoo! Does this sound familiar?
Oh my god, I have so much to do today.
Don't forget to breathe.
But I have almost 400 emails in my inbox and 30 phone calls to make.
Have you looked into getting a virtual assistant yet?
Oh, and I need to schedule all my social media posts.
Did you drink anything today?
I had coffee.
Did you eat today?
Did I mention coffee's a bean?
This is Small Biz Life.
Hello and welcome back to Small Biz Life. My name is Kristen Ingram.
And I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And we are coming to you from the Ingram Digital Media Studios. Which sounds way fancier than it is.
Yes, the marble ceilings and floors are just a bit sparse at this point.
Yeah, there's no marble in the recording studio. No.
But we did turn off the water fountain so it doesn't make noise.
We have a giant whiteboard, though.
Yes, we do have a giant whiteboard.
And that is like the feature of the Ingram Digital Media recording studio. So this week's episode is all about security. So to get us started off talking about security, this is the result if you don't have good security. I talked in last week's episode about how the IRS had an outage in their e-file system. Well, on February 8th, the IRS revealed that it had discovered and stopped an automated cyber attack on its e-filing personal identification number system. So essentially what a taxpayer can do is a taxpayer can go to the IRS website and request a PIN to use for e-filing. Now, if you use a CPA or an EA or another tax preparer that is registered with the IRS, you don't have to get a PIN. You can generate one with the person who's preparing your taxes. But essentially what happened is hackers made 464,000 attempts to use social security numbers to try to generate these PINs. And what happens is if a PIN is generated, you cannot file your tax return without that PIN. So if you request one, or if somebody requests one on your behalf, you have to use that to file your return. So the IRS said that no personal information was stolen, but the cybercriminal succeeded in using 101 social security numbers to access e-file PINs. So we don't know if this is what actually caused the e-file issue from last week or if this is an unrelated issue, but you are probably a victim of identity theft at some point in your travels. You figure there was the Home Depot breach, there was the Target breach, the IRS has been breached. If you were a federal worker at any time in your life, your information was probably stolen. Most of us have our information floating around somewhere. What we need to do is we need to do the best job that we can to protect the information that the hackers don't already have.
Yes, that is very good.
That's kind of right. That's kind of how I think about it.
Yes, they might not have it. And part of it, too, is entrepreneurs, especially if we have websites where we're controlling communities and stuff like that, we really have to be cognizant that not only do we make our site weaker, but all of the users who belong to our forums or belong to our community, or they joined up the WordPress blog, are all putting you at risk. The question is probably not, can you be hacked? If with someone with enough attention and resources can hack you.
Right.
However, the thing is, what can we do to protect ourselves? What can we do to protect our clients?
Yeah, no, I think that's great. So this week, we're going to talk about the 10 best security practices for consumers. And this is a really good place to start for small businesses because if you don't have your PC, your phone, your files, your email locked down well. Those are the major components that we're using for our businesses.
Yes.
So we thought that this would be a really good place to start. The first thing that we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about antivirus software. And it amazes me how many of my clients don't keep their antivirus software up to date. They don't want to buy one. Whatever they get with their computer is what they use. And then they let it expire because they don't want to pay for it.
Yep. Or they think I have a Mac and Macs are invulnerable, or
Macs don't get viruses.
Macs don't get viruses. I'm completely safe in the I environment. You might be safer because less people use your equipment than use Windows machines. However, you are growing and are noticed, especially if you're using a phone or an iPad.
There's actually a Macworld article from May of last year that said, checking your Mac for viruses. Wait, what? So, I mean, this is something from Macworld where they're saying, hey, listen, you can't just say, oh, I have a Mac, I'm invulnerable, because that's really not the case anymore. So make sure that even if you have a Mac, that you're protecting yourself.
Yes.
What software is out there that you like?
If you're looking for something free, there are a couple of versions that I do like out there. Avast, Avira are both ones that I've used. I'm currently using Avira. There are a couple I would also look at if I was going to pay. It would be either Kaspersky or ESET. Kaspersky's pretty much every year been ranked the number one antivirus software out there. They actually been accused of dirty tactics by some of their opponents. I know Avast and some of the smaller players got burned by Kaspersky and ended up releasing modifications that made their antiviruses start doing false positive attacks, or at least that's the accusation. ESET is another very solid program. There's very little difference in the ability of the higher level antivirus software when it's been tested to actually find problems and solve them on the computers. So most of the ones out there are pretty good at doing it. You have to understand, though, they do not make you invulnerable. There's a great story about the squirrel and the squirrel who wants to get into your bird feeder. There's this guy who goes out and he notices a squirrel in his bird feeder. And he's like, oh man, I got to stop it. So he hangs his bird feeder up. And then the next day he walks out. And guess what? The squirrel has now climbed up the tree, climbed down on top of the food, and has gotten to the bird feeder. He starts adding devices, water guns that will fire at it, small drones that will spy on it all the time. And finally, a farmer comes across the road and is like, hey, what are you doing? The guy's like, I'm trying to stop the squirrel from getting my bird feeder. He's like, listen, you're spending, an hour a day trying to stop the squirrel? He spends the entire day trying to get to the food. You're never going to win.
Right. Unless you get the spinny bird feeder. I'll see if I can find a video for that because that's hilarious.
The Crooks create software that automatically looks for vulnerabilities and attacks. Within the NSA, there is an organization that Snowden revealed. They're a top secret group of hackers that essentially attack software. During one of their speeches, they said they do not focus on these new, hip, zero-day vulnerabilities, the ones that you'll see in the newspaper or hear about in the media, because they're fleeting, fixes come. Maybe they might use it as a target of opportunity on a specific target. But in general, when the NSA hacks, and they are some of the very good hackers that work for the NSA, they look at existing vulnerabilities that have never been patched. Even ones where patches have come out for on older computers, they will look to see if it's been patched on that computer, and then they will attack it if it's not been.
Wow. With antivirus software, I think one thing that I would add is if you have a piece of software that is integral to your operations, talk to that organization and see what they recommend. Because I know my tax software, I'm using Avira right now, and I'm actually switching to ESET. Every time I install an update, it tries to shut down things in my tax software. So, you want to make sure that whatever you're using, it does not try to quarantine any of the files in your software. So it'd be really good to just kind of check with whatever software vendors you're using and say, hey, is there something that is better than other things?
And one other thing to keep in mind too, outside of antiviruses, there are two other types of software you have to be concerned about: malware and programs that are called PUPs. And PUPs are typically sleazy software. They're what the industry calls potentially unwanted programs. They're all the icons you see on the desktop when you spend $1,000 or $2,000 on a computer, and then you get all of this bonus free software. Some of which is actually very sleazy. I usually clean it all off before I start installing anything, and once I get everything cleaned off that I can, I will then start adding the programs I want to the software, because on some of these machines they load an incredible amount of crap. Software to get you to start using Office, whether or not you have it, it comes installed with it. They're free antivirus, which is usually not very good. Download Malwarebytes, at least the free version. Run it every once in a while. It will help identify and remove those kind of programs from your computer. They're not really a virus, but they're probably stuff you don't want on your computer as well.
And we are going to link all of these programs that we talk about. We're going to link them all in the show notes. So Avast, Avira, ESET, Kaspersky, Malwarebytes. We'll probably put a couple other bonus ones in there that we like. I know CCleaner. We'll put CCleaner in there.
Defragger, even though that really doesn't protect you,
but it's a good thing for computer speed. So there's going to be a ton of links to different software in the show notes. So make sure that you check them out. Smallbizlife.com.
A lot of them will usually have free versions.
Yeah, or at least free trials. So if you're not sure what you want to do with antivirus, you don't want to lock yourself in for a year without trying it. Most of them have 30-day free trials. You can try it out, see what you like. Just don't put more than one on the machine.
Yes.
They'll attack each other.
Yes, if you have that one that you've never renewed on your computer, uninstall it, download the new one, install that.
Yeah.
And if you have a Symantec product installed there, a lot of times they have multiple things within your software that you'll have to. It drives me crazy.
I think that's one of the things I really don't like about Symantec is that when it's funny because it's almost like a virus. You uninstall pieces of it, but if you don't uninstall all of it, it will reinstall itself.
That's right.
It's awful. I don't like it.
And when I ran my small business where I would go in and help people out, I was using that because that was the industry standard. Norton's, which was bought by Symantec and you'd run them and maybe they find the software. They're pretty good at finding it. Horrible at removing it. Horrible.
Yeah. The second thing on our list today is to always use a device firewall. Windows has a firewall built into it. Is that enough?
Usually it's better than nothing. What they're talking about in general, where they say use a device firewall, it means things from outside of your house should pass through a firewall coming into your house. All of your devices have to go in and out of that firewall. It will typically be in your router. Those are the hardware firewalls are the most effective. It does not hurt to have software firewalls on your computers as well too. And obviously, if you're out in the wild, if you're using free Wi-Fi, those become essential at that point because you obviously aren't passing through the firewall in your house, but in your house. And I think all home routers have firewalls in them. I'm not 100% positive if that's completely true.
I know if you have a separate router, it does.
Yes.
I'm not sure if you have the combined.
If you have the combined one, if that's true, I assume it is. But it's worth checking if you're unsure, or especially if you have an older one, maybe it's worth just double checking to make sure that there's a firewall in it as well, because hardware is a lot tougher for hackers to beat than software.
Okay, that's good to know. So, the takeaway from that is check your router, make sure your firewall's turned on, go into your computer and make sure the firewalls are turned on there as well. Okay, that's good. So we touched upon this a little bit. Number 3 is keep your operating systems and software up to date.
And I want to make this abundantly clear for all of our entrepreneurs out there. This means your phone software, which sometimes your phone company makes difficult for you to do. The applications on your phone, if your phone is set up to where it has to be in Wi-Fi to update your applications, make sure to spend some time, double check if you've been out of the house for a while. When you get home, keep the apps on your phones up to date, keep your computers up to date, and your WordPress sites, which includes plugins and themes. If you have a free theme and there's an update for it, it will tell you the same way it will tell you if there's a plugin update. You must keep updating them. And you're also less likely to break your website if you keep them up to date, because if you go from generation 1.2 to 7.9 at some point, it's more likely to break your website than it is if you go up all of the increments along the way.
Yeah, and remember, if you have a Windows XP computer, Microsoft has not updated that in over a year, which means that hackers, or Jeff said earlier, the NSA is looking for, those old vulnerabilities. If you have Windows XP, you are a target.
And trust me, there were vulnerabilities that were not discovered or at least released until after it went out of support. From talking with the LAN specialist where I work, the people who work on our networks and keep my business safe, they tell me usually the first 6 months to a year, all of the viruses start to update with especially those vulnerabilities attached to them. So at this point, if you're running XP, you are ticking.
Yep. So I would definitely make sure that you update. And it's interesting, some of my clients that have XP actually got the free Windows 10 upgrade.
Really?
Yeah, that wasn't supposed to be offered to them. But they received that offer. Their machines are probably too old to run it very well, though.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it downloaded definitely.
Yeah. Okay, so make sure that you keep that up to date. And I know some people, they're worried about downloading updates because they're worried about the bugs.
Or even just the bandwidth. If you live somewhere rural, these downloads can be gigantic, especially if you're downloading Windows 10. That's a big, big update.
But you've got to do it, because hackers know that there are people out there who won't.
Yes.
This is one of my huge pet peeves. Part of it is because of the intellectual property, and part of it is just because this is where I see most of the viruses come from. Don't download stuff that's pirated. That movies, music, software. Don't go to file sharing sites. Don't do it. Because, first of all, from the intellectual property standpoint, you're stealing somebody else's stuff.
Yeah.
So imagine that you as, an author or, a content developer, imagine how you would feel if somebody stole your content, or, if you design t-shirts and somebody stole your design, how would you feel if somebody stole your stuff and tried to sell it? Then don't do that to other people.
Yes. And a lot of times where a lot of viruses do come from, or some devices are sold, they are sold legitimately, like through vendors, and they have hacked copies. This is not a common problem in North America. But a lot of times when you hear about, really bad Microsoft products, a lot of times in third world countries, there's a belief that Microsoft is the better operating system. And people want it even though it's not free. And so they get these hacked versions of software overseas, and it comes really installed with zombie software so that they can use their software against them. They can spy on them. And really, you can definitely insert a virus into a movie. Don't think it can't be done. Just be very careful. I'm with Kristen. I won't do it for security reasons. I only go to trusted stores to buy stuff. It's not a first world issue, but be very careful. Even going through what you think is a legitimate online app store, go to the source, the people who make it, or go to like an official app store. If you're uncertain, go to Amazon or other reputable vendors.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. I think we'd said that before, that make sure, use use iTunes or use the Google Play Store to make sure that you're getting the real copy of the software. I've had clients get viruses because they downloaded music from a file sharing site.
Yeah. And a lot of times extensions for browsers are popular ways to deliver bad content. I know one of the favorite ones for a while were coupon plugins for browsers. Mm-hmm. And it's not always necessarily viruses, but it's malware that's spying on you, delivering ads when you're not online. Some of it is more frustrating than anything else. But once again, this is what happens when you look to not pay for things. And sometimes there are legitimate free versions. Just do some research on the product before you do it, because a lot of times people stay away from that. The sad thing is, if you have certain software, Java and Adobe come to mind, be careful when you're installing updates. They push all kinds of really bad software down onto people.
Like the Ask toolbar.
Even if I want the product, I will not take it through a download that comes as an update from someone else. That just frustrates the heck out of me.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that.
At this point, I don't want any search toolbar. I can type right into where my URL is and do a search. I don't need a toolbar for it. Go away.
It still blows my mind that people are downloading those.
Mm-hmm. And they do.
Yeah.
And I go to people's computers at work and they're having issues and they have these they have like 15 different bars attached to their computer.
So their search window is like a 2x2 square because of all the toolbars that are on there. Okay. So while we're talking about, being online, don't click on any pop-up windows that tell you have a virus.
Yes. If you start seeing windows that tell you are infected, especially if you're browsing the web, you are being lied to. And they'll be tricky. They'll throw it down to where the notifications pop up on your screen. A lot of times they'll even kind of look like the software that, like an actual Windows notification. Do not click on them while you're in the browser. If you think you might have a problem, shut the browser down, go to Uncle Google or Uncle Bing and ask them. Or I like a new one, DuckDuckGo. We'll talk maybe more about that in the next episode, though. So
a lot of times if you hit a site by accident, it has one of those things like, you're infected with a virus. The thing that you need to do a lot of times is you actually, if you're on a Windows machine, you actually need to Control-Alt-Delete.
Just kill the process.
Bring up your task manager and kill the process. Okay, and that will get you out of it without you having to click on anything. That might be overkill,
but some of these people...
Some of them, they lock out your browser.
It's what they call a social engineering attack a lot of times. And they're very clever about putting the wrong things in the wrong places and tricking you. If you don't know what you're doing, or if you just want to be safe, kill the task. However you have to do that on your computer or on your phone, just kill the task. Don't even interact with it anymore.
Well, I've had issues where I've typed in a site wrong. And you go to a page and it's like beeping at you and it's flashing and this box comes up and you can't X out of it and you can't X out of the tab. You can't even close Chrome.
Yeah.
The only way to get out of it is to completely shut down the browser through the task manager. The same thing
to do is to kill off the task, whatever it is. No arguments from me.
Okay. I think most people are pretty good about this one. Be careful with email attachments.
Well, there's a reason why they keep showing up on all the lists, honey, because people aren't very good at it.
I know.
And even if it's coming from a friend, if you were not expecting an attachment, do not open it. Pick up the phone, text them, because you're not going to actually call them, in today's world, but just verify that they sent you the picture, that they sent you, oh, did you just send me pictures from your vacation? A lot of the software are becoming more intelligent. And this isn't even a new one, but they will actually lie to you and say, hi, I'm Kristen, Jeff. please open this naughty picture I sent to you. And you're like, oh, wow. And you click on it and boom, your computer's toast.
Right. Yeah, no, they have become much better about the text in the emails. It's written much more sly now.
They have copyright editors now, I believe.
Yeah. They have copy editors.
Oh, copyright. So if you infringe on their virus, they'll sue you too.
So just, and I always do that with my clients. If I get something from them and I'm not expecting to get anything, I just pick up the phone and say, hey, did you send this to me? Just be careful.
And sometimes people do send you stuff out of the blue. But just contact them first, because especially if it's some form of an executable program, when you open it up, you are your own.
Right. So if you're using public Wi-Fi hotspots, don't do it without using a VPN.
Don't do it without using a VPN. Now, I'm not going to say I'm the best person for always listening to that advice, but like when I'm working on my computer at a spot, I do not do it unsecured. I don't.
Mm-hmm. So how do you secure it?
Last time I was on vacation, I used a Avast private VPN feature that came pre-installed as a potentially unwanted program on my computer. I tried it out and I used it while we were in Nashville. Okay.
Interesting. So I was actually looking up a company. It's called Private Internet Access. Mm-hmm. This is something you can try it for 7 days. If you do a yearly subscription, it's $39.95 a year.
Not bad at all.
Not bad at all.
Especially if you like to work out in public, completely worth it. When you join a network with a computer or a phone, you're joining a network. Other people belong to that network. Some of them do not have good intentions.
So, and this is pretty cool too, because for your $40 a year, you get a secure VPN, encrypted Wi-Fi. It will do voice over IP support. Mm-hmm. You can have up to 5 devices simultaneously. Mm-hmm. So there's no traffic logs, unlimited bandwidth. So this is actually, this is pretty nice. And this is actually recommended by a number of articles that I was reading about VPNs. So, and there are other companies out there too. You can actually Google.
Yeah, some free, some to pay. Do research on them. Use a VPN if you work out in public a lot.
A VPN is going to protect your information when you're out in public. And their site's actually pretty interesting, because they're like, this is the kind of software that people use to get into other people's computers. So they really try to educate you on their site also, which is kind of cool. So and that would be something. Yeah, and scary. So it's kind of interesting to check it out.
I put it to you this way too. If I was to create a malicious ad to inject onto someone else's website, I could create an ad that essentially, if your cursor goes over the ad, I could own all of the information about your computer.
That's fun.
So even moving your mouse cursor across the screen on a laptop creates the possibility that essentially the event of mousing over something. And I've even seen now where they're now using software to create operating systems within browsers, which means bad guys will have the ability to create an operating system within a browser, which means they'll have a fully functioning computer within your browser.
That's scary.
Yeah.
I'm never going online again.
Yeah, just turn off your computers right now, folks.
Okay, the podcast is over. We're done. Welcome to the last episode of Small... No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
But it does, like, it really, like, you kind of...
It can be scary. You have to understand, you have to be careful where you go. It's kind of like when you're walking through the big scary city, you know where to look towards, where not to go. What's the bad block? What's the good block? Maybe it's worth taking a taxi because it's safer. Well, the taxi's the VPN. There are good blocks and bad blocks, and sometimes they're not where you expect them. So just you have to be cognizant of where you're at. If something unusual happens, don't necessarily trust it. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like when you get that email from your bank saying, "Oh, click on this link and log in."
I never
don't ever do that.
Right. Just go to the website for your bank. Mm-hmm. And that's actually interesting, because the next one we're going to talk about is passwords. So use passwords on everything and make sure they're strong.
And here's what I'm going to tell you about passwords. Passwords are stupid, but they're the best kind of stupid out there right now. Passwords are mainly brute force attacked. So the idea is if they know your username, they will brute force attack your account to try and get in, or someone else who uses social media. Passwords are, and this is one of the problems with strong passwords. People end up creating the same password for every site, and it sucks everywhere because it's this pattern like perhaps with a dollar sign replacing the S. And so that is no safer than perhaps without a dollar sign. Or maybe you replace the E with a 3. No, that's no safer than perhaps. There's actually a list of all of the worst passwords, and you would be surprised how many of these are actually used year after year. Some real obvious ones like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 has been the most popular password for at least 2 years in a row.
That's hilarious.
Password is number 2 on the list I'm looking at. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. QWERTY. Now, QWERTY is the name of your keyboard, and the reason it is if you look at the pattern where the Q starts and read over to the Y, that's QWERTY. That's why it's a QWERTY keyboard. Everyone knows that password. 1 to 5. Football, baseball.
Welcome.
Welcome's a new one. Login, princess, that's a new one.
Dragon.
QWERTY that goes all the way over to the P instead of stopping at the Y. Even more brilliant.
So what I want to see on next year's list is Puppy Monkey Baby.
Puppy Monkey Baby. It might beat out Star Wars next year, which has made it onto the list.
Well, I see Monkey is on the list.
Monkey's on the list, so you're part of the way there.
Let me in.
If you use phrases, do not make it a common phrase. Do not use, do not think like Bible verses seem like a great one. Romans or 2 Corinthians 1 chapter 2. If you're a 2 Corinthians person, don't you mean
2 Corinthians?
No.
We're going with the Trump pronunciation.
Trump
okay, all right. I just want to make sure we have that correct.
People think that 2 Corinthians or 1:2 is strong because there's a symbol in there. There are numbers in there, some caps, some non-caps.
John 3:16.
John 3:16. Hackers know that Christians use Bible verses. No Bible verse is safe. Do not use Bible verses as strong passwords. It can't be a pattern, and the best way to create is to use random generated passwords because humans think in patterns. As a developer, I sometimes have trouble logging into different computers and certain accounts because I'm used to the way the pattern feels in my hands when I'm typing it. That's one of the patterns I use. It's by feel. Humans think in patterns. Randomly generate passwords. Use a password vault.
Oh, I love the password
Something
vault.
like LastPass, which I like too, because it will also track you and it will grade you on how stupid you are. Mine's perfect. Really. I'm lying, but it will actually tell you where you have repeated passwords. And, spend 15 minutes a day or a week. Spend one of the blocks of time you work on to clean up your passwords, because what will happen is if they get a hold of your Facebook account, and they can figure out what your bank is, they're going there next.
Well, so here's the thing, right? So I'm going to kind of actually switch these up a little bit because you just mentioned this. One of the things on our list was to review your online accounts and your credit report. So one of the great things with LastPass is that it pulled in every password that I had saved on my computers.
Sometimes you have no idea.
Because we all do this, right? You're like, oh, yes, save, because I don't want to have to remember this. So I had all of these accounts that I didn't even realize I had. And I went through and I started going through and canceling those accounts if I wasn't using them. So that's another benefit of having like something like LastPass is it scoured all of my devices for online accounts.
And now one other thing to keep in mind If the sites you're using give you the option for two-factor authentication, take it. It is essentially the idea of two-factor authentication is there's a third party that's verifying you are both who you say you are.
Yep.
And so it will, a common one's a picture, or sometimes they have a pin thing that pops up on the screen and you have to use the mouse and you can't even type it in. Use those kind of things, or you can even get little pins for your computer and plug them in, and they will have numbers and they have to match up with the server. A lot of enterprise software will use stuff like that. Use these kind of things. They're better than just having a password, and it helps give you a benefit too of, that you think you're on your bank account, but you've heard that, there's people out there who are faking your bank to try and steal information. The two-factor will help protect you from being stolen from that way as well too, because those kind of messages will happen what is called outside of bandwidth. So neither one of you will control the bandwidth that's happening at. That way, it's harder for the hacker to get in between and pretend like he's someone else in the exchange.
Okay. And one thing that I personally do, especially with my banks, a lot of times when you're logging into your bank, it will say, is this a trusted computer? Enter in the answer to this question, and then you'll never have to do it again. I always do all the steps. I always say I'm on a public computer. Don't remember this computer. And so to log in my bank, I need to go through 3 different steps in order to do it, but it's much more secure.
Yeah.
Okay. And that brings us to the last thing that we're going to talk about today.
I got one more thing about passwords I have to go over.
Okay, go ahead.
Security challenge questions.
I'm going to talk. That's where we're going next.
Okay.
So since we're on this topic, beware of what kind of information you share on social media, because a lot of the challenge questions are things like, what's your dog's name? What's your cat's name? What's your mother's maiden name? What's your birthday? Where did you go? Where did you last go to high school? What was the mascot at your last high school? Who was your best man?
What's your maiden name? And then I go to your Facebook account and I see what your maiden name is.
Well, actually, no, it's not your maiden name. It's your mother's maiden name.
Okay. I've seen
But here's the thing. A lot of people, and I'm guilty of this, I'm going to go change this right now, put their own maiden name in their Facebook so people from high school can find them.
That's what I mean. You go to the woman's account and you
so
see
the
what
thing
their
is,
maiden name
so you go to, so for me, you go to my mom's, and if my mom has her maiden name up there, then you now have my mother's maiden name. And so if you're a woman and you have your maiden name on your Facebook, you're putting your children at risk. So if you've got kids that are in their 20s or their 30s, that your Facebook could be giving, a security answer for your kids' information. And that you're marked as their mother, right? Because they have those family ties thing on Facebook too.
And my thing is, be smart when you answer security challenge questions with information that is possibly publicly accessible, aka if you talk about your pets, none of your pet names are safe. If you've ever talked about where you live, it's not safe. And in general, where you are born is public information anyway.
Right.
If it's information that only you know and you use it as a security question, be smart and freaking lie. Just lie.
And then you got to keep track of all the lies.
Or randomly generate it and keep a note in your, password thing. Do not tell the truth. And I understand why you need to know these things because, let's be honest. What's your likelihood of talking to someone at Google and getting them to reset your account? 0. But you cannot just simply use the truthful answers.
Yeah. Because we share way too much information.
And if you're in an account where the data in there is specifically important, do not do one that will, if you pass the security check, will just allow you to reset the password. If the account's important to you, that's a bad setup. It's better to have it emailed to you, once again, going outside of the bandwidth of that organization. Your backup, when you have Gmail accounts, set up the secondary email in there and use that to recover your Gmail account. Don't ever set up a situation, especially if the data is important, to where it's just going to allow you to step in and, okay, you answered, your mother's maiden name is Kabooble, which is what my mother's maiden name is. And, okay, so someone guessed Kabooble, then they can reset my password. They know my username. I'm done.
Yep.
So just think about it.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, be smart, right? So, kind of what we're seeing, what Jeff was saying earlier about, be street smart, know your good blocks and your bad blocks. You wouldn't, you wouldn't walk around and hold up a sign that says, this is my mother's maiden name and this is where I was born. Don't do that online either.
Yeah.
Think about what you're doing online. Be smart online. Go check out the show notes for links to everything that we talked about today. My tip of the week this week is to implement at least 2 of these things this week.
Yeah.
Go get LastPass, which is linked in the show notes. Review your online accounts. Start going through and building stronger passwords. Go through your Facebook profile and see what you're actually sharing with the world.
And now for all of those out there, we've all had these moments where you've made that naive mistake, either online or in real life. Write your story down on a $100 bill and just email or mail it to us.
I like that. That's pretty good. Or if you don't want to do that, next time you shop at Amazon, access Amazon through smallbizlife.com/Amazon. And it'll be like sending us,
That's right.
money with your stories on it.
Yeah. And then just email us the story and let us know that you bought something through Amazon.
I see that works too. But if you want to write your story down on a $100 bill and send it to us,
we would appreciate it.
Send me an email and give you our address. It'll be good. So thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. I hope that you had fun with us. I know that this internet stuff can be really scary at times, but hopefully we made it a little bit amusing for you to listen to.
And if you're really concerned, especially if you're really throwing yourself out there, really consider services like LifeLock. Think of them as insurance for your identity. There's a reason why insurance companies are starting to sell insurance for that, or companies like LifeLock are out there. Find one that works for you and do it, because the more public you are, the more likely you are to be targeted. And even if you're not targeted directly, when someone hacks into a website you belong to, they might own you now too.
Yeah. So that's the thing. It's like, you not only have to look at protecting yourself, but then you have to know everybody else that has your information as well, and you don't know how secure they are. That's why services like LifeLock are really popular.
Yeah.
So if you have any questions about this, the best place to interact with us is in the Facebook group, which you can access through facebook.com/groups/smallbizlife, or just search for Small Biz Life Community on Facebook.
Or just on notes written on $100 bills.
Or notes written on $100 bills. That works too. Thank you for listening to Small Biz Life. If you enjoyed the show, please take a few minutes to rate and review the show on iTunes or Stitcher. Please visit smallbizlife.com to view today's show notes, take this week's poll, join the Facebook community, follow us on Twitter, or submit a question for the mailbag. Support the show by checking the resources page or by going to smallbizlife.com/Amazon whenever you shop.
This was Small Biz Life. This was Small Biz Life.